And unlike the rest of the world, that constantly judges him for things he's had to do to survive and for things he had no control over, like being an orphan, Ilmo refers to him as sacred. As much as Ayin might despise Ilmo for what he does, there's a level of attraction to him. Ayin is attracted to Ilmo's view of him. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today, we'll be discussing Blind Play by YD, and this review is thanks in part to those of you who took part in my poll. This was the last choice in the poll, Serial Killer and Captive. And if you'd like to check out the other two options, you can watch them by clicking the annotations or the links in the description. If you'd like to help decide what gets reviewed next, go ahead and subscribe, get your BL Library card for the BL Library, and be on the lookout for my community posts with polls. If you want more power in the polls and some other fun benefits, check out my Patreon. I've got some fun read with me and play with me live streams happening over there. I'm currently playing Cloud Meadow, which is an 18+ game. Oh my god, did you see that CG? See, I've always played women, so I've never got to see that. Wow! The cum dripping out on the table. That was excellent. Plus some patron-only giveaways. You can find that in the description below. Before we get started, there will be spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled on this manhwa, go and click off now. No worries, I'll catch you next time. For those of you who decide to stick around, let's go over some content warnings. And get ready, this is pretty much every content warning in existence. There may be references to violence, murder, blood, gore, death, torture, confinement, faking disability, disability, police, Stockholm Syndrome, child abuse, child neglect, sex work, prejudice, BDSM including forced and deadly, orphans, ableism, cheating, mental illness, theft, exploitation, manipulation, power imbalance, social gap, alcoholism, dubcon, non-consenting recording, immolation, mentions of religion, obsession, blackmail, god complex, dead animals, drowning, mentions of divorce, abuse of animal corpses, abuse, slut-shaming, breakups, attempted murder for hire, child abandonment, poisoning, pseudo-incest between men who consider themselves brothers, not the main couple, stalking, self-deprecation, self-hatred, kidnapping, corruption, attempted rape, hunting, animal abuse, implied pedophilia, classism, gun violence, mentions of hit and run, homomesia, bullying, suicide, excessive drinking, car accidents, and self-harm as these things do appear in the manhwa. But if that's okay with you, let's go and get started. Ayin wants one thing, love. Coming from an abusive home, eventually orphaned due to his abusive father's death, and then experiencing intense prejudice due to being an orphan, true love is something Ayin has never experienced and desperately wants. He does have a boyfriend, but even in this relationship, Ayin knows the love is one-sided. His boyfriend, a college student, frequently exchanges money with Ayin for sex and affection. Ayin is fully aware of this arrangement, yet he still wants love from him, so he continues to pay his boyfriend, hoping one day this fake love will become something real. Unfortunately, his boyfriend's tastes are pretty rich, and Ayin's only means of affording his expensive expectations is selling his body. In Korea, the only way to become a licensed massage therapist is to be visually disabled. So, Ayin pretends to be blind and picks up customers under the guise of giving them a massage, only to have sex with them. He makes good money doing so and gets some nice gifts he gives his boyfriend as gifts after stealing them from his clients. Most of his customers are in upper society, so he doesn't worry about his safety. But then he gets picked up by prolific author C.O. Ilmo. Ayin isn't worried at first, but then the author begins to test him, holding out his hand, trying to point him around places, offering things to him without a word, as if he knows Ayin isn't actually blind. It's uncomfortable, but not the worst thing in the world, and Ayin does his best to keep up the charade. But Ayin is really put to the test when he enters Ilmo's apartment, only to find a rotting corpse on the couch. It's the ultimate game of cat and mouse as Ilmo tries to scare Ayin into revealing his disability is fake so he can kill him. At the same time, Ayin maintains the ruse, determined to survive each and every encounter while trying to expose Ilmo for the murderer he is. It's a deadly game of lust and blood. Who will win? To start with, the art style in this is very sketchy and inconsistent, but it has an intensity that's perfect for the content. The subtlety in Ilmo's reactions and his unsettling smile really highlights just how cruel and menacing he is as a character. Similarly, the reactions of his victims, including Ayin, are super expressive and intense. When it's done well, this art style is very emotional, stunning, and horrifying. But there are some scenes where it is off kilter in one way or another. If you're looking for perfection, this isn't it, but I still think it's very lovely and expressive in so many scenes. And this begins with a bang, or a stab I guess. From the get-go, we get exactly what the story's about, with an intense scene of Ilmo murdering someone. As a horror fan, I love gratuitous and loud depictions of violence like this, and it really shows how unrelenting, unrestrained, and yet how calculating he is. We go from seeing him brutally murdering someone to seeing him quietly signing books and encouraging fans. This dichotomy shows just how clever and cruel Ilmo is. Similarly, the introduction to our main character Ain, though not quite as loud, is just as insightful into his motivations and the life he's lived. He's willing to steal and lie to get what he wants, even if it means getting only the bare modicum of happiness. Immediately we have our power dynamic, a man who has it all and takes even more, with a man who has nothing but will do anything to survive. I love this dynamic so much. But the introductions are only a taste of the amazing story this begins to craft. Neither Ain nor Ilmo are good people. Ilmo is a beloved mystery author on the surface and a serial killer in the shadows. Ain, on the other hand, has experienced prejudice for being an orphan, something he never had a choice in. Ain was forced into the underworld much like he was forced into an orphanage. Though Ain is still wrong for faking a disability, it's clear between the two who we're supposed to be cheering for. Ilmo is much more villainous, but he recognizes the darkness in Ain, which is why Ain survives being with Ilmo. There's a cat and mouse game between the fake blind man and the murderer who knows he's faking, but wants to shake him out of the illusion rather than call him out or punish him for it. This setup does an amazing job of building tension, which made me fall in love with this title. I also love the reasoning behind Ain returning again and again to Ilmo. While it may seem he's forced to, a part of him openly chooses him. For one, he doesn't feel he deserves to be with Myungjun, as Myungjun has always been, quote, pure, unlike him. But Ilmo is dirty and damaged like he is, and unlike the rest of the world, that constantly judges him for things he's had to do to survive and for things he had no control over, like being an orphan, Ilmo refers to him as sacred. As much as Ain might despise Ilmo for what he does, there's a level of attraction to him. Ain is attracted to Ilmo's view of him. Ilmo sees Ain at his lowest but still calls him sacred, and Ilmo is already tarnished, so Ain doesn't have to worry about ruining him. Plus, Ain has always been the giver in his relationships, sacrificing everything while getting scraps in return. But when everything is against Ilmo, Ilmo gives up everything to see and protect Ain. Every love interest tells Ain to come to them, but Ilmo always comes to Ain. There's a certain level of freedom, acceptance, and reciprocation Ain has with Ilmo that he can't find anywhere else, which becomes some amalgamation of love. It's very powerful. And then we get to the ending. Ain ends up blind, Ilmo is suspected of being dead, and the best friend is mute. But Ilmo returns, taking Ain under the guise that he's Myungjun, and it ends. This would have been a fine ending on its own. It's dark, gritty, and cyclical, with Ilmo carting off a blind Ain just like their first meeting. When compared to the beginning, which starts out so explosive and dramatic, this is much more subtle and romantic, but with a hint of foreboding. I really enjoyed it. But then it keeps going, and we get insight into Ilmo's past, a bit of hope mixed with more tragedy from Myungjun, and revelations on how Ain and Ilmo have lived since the end of the main story. There is a point in the main story where it's mentioned that Ain and Myungjun have the same blood type, a rare type at that. This didn't seem like foreshadowing when it was revealed, but later on, during the side stories, Ain gets an eye transplant, and it's mentioned that he gets Myungjun's eyes after his death. This is such a sad end for someone so innocent who has finally started moving on from the terror of Seo Ilmo. But maybe even more painful is the subtle reveal of just how far Ilmo went to pretend to be Myungjun when he first took Ain. He cut off his own fingers to keep up the lie. I wish we could have gotten some insight into how that reveal happened, as I think it would be telling to see how Ain felt knowing Ilmo went to such lengths, but what we get about them is still interesting, and I really enjoyed it in the end. The final scene in particular, as grotesque as it is a poetic moment, one that I think really encompasses just how passionate and cruel love can be. With all that being said, I have to be real, I adore this. It's full of mind games, lust, blood, gore, torture, and death, and I loved every second of it. It's very cyclical with ever-evolving power dynamics and morally irredeemable characters that you still root for, or at least I do. It keeps on theme throughout, so even a glimmer of hope is snuffed out in the most torturous and painful ways. I certainly can't recommend this to everyone, and I'm sure many people despise it for all of its toxicity and violence, but I love it. So, have you read Blind Play? If so, what do you think? Do you agree with my assessment? Do you not? Let me know in comment below. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Bye!